Hello, 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 and welcome to the Climate Crisis Podcast. Today is the first full real episode of the podcast, and I am really excited on what I'm talking about today. So, as you can see by the title, I'm just going to be starting off the podcast with a more informational style approach, and I'll just be explaining all the basics of what's going on and everything that you need to know to understand everything that I will talk about in future episodes. So, today I'll talk about what the environment is and why we need to protect it, some basic history of the climate crisis and environmental issues, what is harming the environment, and how every normal person can help. So, to start it off, the environment includes everything that surrounds us, from the rocks at our feet to the air that we breathe. So, the environment includes living and non living things, and it influences our lives as humans and all of the other amazing creatures on this planet. For example, the environment can influence how we eat food. Like, for example, if you live near the coasts, most of your food could probably come from fishing and things like that. Whereas if you live in the woods, you'd probably hunt or something like that. And this is all part of the environment. So, for many centuries, humans have been slowly damaging our environment, and that's going to cause a lot of problems. Like going back to the fish example, if we as humans are polluting all of the ocean and lakes that we live near, the people on the coasts who get a major food source from those fishes would be influenced because those fishes would be harmed by that pollution. Therefore, the humans wouldn't get any food. So that's kind of like a basic explanation of how everything relates to each other. And because of that, it is now our duty to fix those problems. So, some quick history is the first Earth Day was held on April 22nd, 1970, and has been going on. And last year was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And fun fact, my birthday is actually April 22nd, so you could say I was born for this. And basically, what the first Earth Day did was it put the country on track to create the EPA, or the Environmental Protection Agency, and it also put a lot of major pieces of legislation into effect in the 1970s. And now for a quick quiz question. What do you think the main turning point of great dumps of pollution that greatly influenced climate change right away is? What event do you think that would have been? I'll give you a few seconds to think on that. So, you may have guessed it, and if you haven't, I will reveal the answer right now. It was the Industrial Revolution. So, the dawn of the Industrial Age is what basically started this whole climate crisis. It was from the burning of fossil fuels like coal and natural gas and oil, which led to humans significantly adding great amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And by the end of the 20th century, the world was completely dependent on and rapidly depleting the planet's fossil fuels. And using these fossil fuels, getting them from the earth and putting them back into the earth by burning them and things like that, that creates most of the air pollution that we're putting into our environment that's causing this climate change. So, one major thing that is harming the environment is, like I just said, climate change. And you may be wondering, what is climate change? Well, technically, it is just the change of typical weather in an area. It could be like temperature, rain conditions, moisture levels, etc. And the difference between just weather and climate is that weather can change hourly, like it can be raining 1 hour and then not raining the next. But climate takes hundreds or even millions of years to change, so it is more the overall weather conditions in an area over a long period of time. So the Earth's climate has always been changing. For example, during the Ice Age, the Earth was significantly cooler than it is now. But the difference between that and climate change right now is that the Earth hasn't been warming up by natural causes, but by human-made causes. And these human-made causes aren't good because we made them. It isn't just the natural course of the Earth. So, some major contributions to climate change is air pollution and more specifically greenhouse gases. So, as I said before, the climate was most significantly affected when humans started depending on fossil fuels to just live their life. This is like gas output from vehicles, electricity, and even livestock farms add to the greenhouse gases and the pollution of our world. You may have heard of like the whole cow farts theory, and basically lots of animals, when they eat food and pass it out, they release methane. And because, like, a lot of the world eats meat and there is lots of like livestock farms holding all these like cows and all that stuff together, is creating herds of methane that's being released into the earth. And because we're breeding these cows like multiple times, and there's just a lot more cows than there would have been naturally without humans kind of affecting that. It's a lot more methane being released than would have if we just didn't exist or we didn't eat cows. So, greenhouse gases are a type of air pollution, such as carbon dioxide or methane, like I just talked about. And these greenhouse gases create basically a layer around the earth, and this layer can be talked as like a blanket that's wrapping the earth, that you may have heard of the blanket theory. And basically what this does is that it lets heat in from the sun into the earth's atmosphere easily. But the problem is that it doesn't let the heat escape as easily, so it keeps most of the heat trapped inside of the earth's atmosphere. And over time, as more heat gets trapped and more heat is being trapped, obviously the earth is going to warm. And this warming is how climate change started, and this is detrimental to our planet. Like I said before, climate change happens over a long period of time. So, ever since, like, let's say the Industrial Revolution is when this all started, ever since then, that layer of greenhouse gases has been just slowly adding more and more and more heat trapped into the earth and letting less and less and less go. So, it's been warming a lot over the past years. And like I said, it's not very good, obviously. Now, you may be wondering, why isn't this good? Like, why do I care? So, this is what I'm going to talk about next. So, what are the harmful effects of climate change? For one, the ocean's temperature. The ocean actually absorbs a lot of the gases and heat that's trapped in the Earth's atmosphere. So, that's why we can't really feel that heat as much as you think we should if it's been accumulating for so long. So the ocean absorbs all that heat, but the problem is instead of warming the atmosphere, the oceans are now getting warm. And this ocean warming causes ice caps to melt, and as you may have heard, that's already been happening. This puts many animals that are at the North and South poles, like penguins and polar bears, at risk of extinction because their homes are being ruined. And I don't think we want penguins and polar bears to be extinct because they're so darn cute. And the melting of ice caps also caused the oceans to rise. If all of the ice caps were to melt, the global sea level would rise approximately 70 meters or 230 feet. And this would cause flooding of every coastal city on the planet. That's a lot of cities, you may think, right? Obviously. Um, so the ice caps hold a lot of the oceans or a lot of the water content on Earth. So the melting of them would cause a lot of rise. And fun fact, or not so fun fact, is that if the ice caps were to melt, most of Florida would probably disappear, as most of the state is at or a few feet above the sea level. And when you're that close to the sea level and the sea level rises approximately 230 feet, that is a lot of land that's going to be covered. Another harmful effect of climate change is the Earth's atmosphere barrier, also known as the ozone layer. So, the ozone layer is a thin part of the Earth's atmosphere, and it absorbs almost all of the sun's harmful ultraviolet light, or UVB. UVB is a very harmful type of radiation that can cause cancer in everything from humans to even plants. This obviously isn't good. Like, obviously, cancer isn't good for you. So, basically, what's happening with the ozone layer is that it's getting thinner. And because it's getting thinner, it's letting more of that UVB in to our planet. And the reason it is getting thinner is a result of humans emitting chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. And these are ozone depleting chemicals and greenhouse gases. So this depletes the ozone layer, which means it thins it out, and that lets in more UVB radiation from the sun. Another harmful effect of climate change is the air quality. Burning fossil fuels releases gas and chemicals into the air, and humans' energy use and production and all that is releasing all these fossil fuels. According to UNEP, across the globe, 9 in 10 people are breathing unclean air, harming their health and shortening their lifespan. Every year, about 7 million people die from diseases and infections related to air pollution. That's crazy, right? 7 million people. And it's like crazy that nobody's kind of doing anything about this when this many people are dying. And it's a problem, you know? We should be everybody should be actively doing something to help fix this problem. So, now that we talked about the harmful effects of climate change, you would want to know, why is it important that we protect the environment? So, now that you know why it's important to help reverse or just help better this climate change problem, I'm going to talk about why the environment is important. So, the environment protects the ecosystem. The ecosystems make up the environment, and if we're damaging the environment, then the ecosystem is in trouble. Ecosystems include the plants, animals, climate, landscape, and other features that make up a unique area. And if these are being damaged, we're damaging the living things in the ecosystem, and that can ultimately affect us as humans. Going back to the fish scenario, if the fish are being damaged, that's going to affect us because we're not going to be able to eat that fish. And secondly, it protects our humanity. Without a good environment, we don't have anything to live off of. Everything we have comes from our environment: food, water, resources, like shelter, all started from the environment. Without it, we don't have any shelter or resources to live off of. The environment is the only one that we have, so we have to take charge and protect it. So, lastly, we want to know, how can we protect it? How can we help? Well, there are a lot of simple things that you can do. For one, you have to limit your greenhouse gas usage. You can do this by carpooling, biking to short areas, or even using public transport. So instead of everybody using their own like gas and stuff like that, by going carpooling or public transport, you're getting multiple people to the same area, which is using less gases per person, right? And biking obviously uses zero greenhouse gases, so that is the ultimate fix. Another thing you can do is turn off the lights and TV when you leave a room. Using electricity also increases fossil fuel and greenhouse gas usage into the air. So if you're just in a room and you notice that another room's light is on, just turn it off. It's not like it's going to affect you or anything, but in the long run, if more important people like kind of think about this in their head, then it's going to make an effect. So don't think like, oh, it's so minuscule of a thing that it doesn't even matter if I do it, because like the saying goes, a small change can make a big difference. A few more things you can do is like turn off the water when you're brushing your teeth or washing your hands, take shorter showers, take more baths. And lastly, plant a few trees. Trees help a lot in the reduction of greenhouse gas usage because, like the oceans, they also absorb some gases like CO2. You may know photosynthesis uses CO2, like we breathe CO2 and plants take that in. So, plant a few trees. I hope that this podcast was interesting to you and that you learned from it, and hopefully, you do some of those how to helps at your own area. And please share this with anybody you think will be interested. Next time, I'll be talking about the IPCC climate report and what basically just kind of summarize everything that they talked about in there. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow my social medias, and that'll be linked down below in the description. Make sure to follow the Climate Crisis YouTube channel and turn on post notifications so that you get notified every time I post a video. And see you next month. Bye.